Hi everyone, my name is Agustin Varela, your Agile trainer. Today on the show we are having Sunil Mundra, Principal Consultant Advisory at ThoughtWorks and author of Enterprise Agility, Being Agile in a Changing World. Great book indeed. Hi Sunil, thanks for joining. It's a really great pleasure.
Thank you, Augustine, for giving me this opportunity to have this conversation with you. I know we are geographically spread apart quite a bit. You in Peru, me in Singapore, 13-hour time difference, but we are still able to make this work. So I am delighted to be a part of this conversation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for joining. So, firstly, can you please tell us about your background and personal experience and why you decided to write this remarkable book?
Sure, Augustine. So I have 30 plus years of experience, of which 20 years is in the IT industry, and of which 10 years is in ThoughtWorks. So before I moved to ThoughtWorks, I was a business analyst, product manager for companies in the financial services domain. And in ThoughtWorks, over the last 10 years, I have worked with organizations and leaders across the world to implement change programs, to help with agile transformations, and also to help leaders shift their mindset from a traditional mindset to an agile mindset. And it's been a very fulfilling experience for me to observe the challenges as well as the enablers related to agility across the world. And what I saw through my work are some patterns which were common across industries and across geographies. And it is from that perspective that I felt like sharing those patterns with the external world. And that the spirit of sharing essentially was the prime driver behind me writing my book. Uh, but I was really struck by one fact which stood out uh, when I looked at the all challenges which the organizations are facing. And the crux of it boils down to the fact that organizations are structured as closed-ended or mechanistic systems. So many organizations still follow the model where uh, they are structured based on work which was physical in nature. But now, as we all know, we do knowledge work, and we all do knowledge work across industries because now technology is a core part of every product, every offering that you have for the customer, which means that organizations were and are living systems, but it is now even more important that they be modeled as such. And I felt that there was not enough recognition of that fact in the literature that at least I had seen. And I therefore felt strongly that I should put out my perspective about that. And that is the core concept in my book. So that's actually the main reason why I wrote the book.
Great. And so you said that you are in Singapore, and when did you move there from India, or were you somewhere in between before that? Can you please tell
Yeah,
us?
so right. So as part of ThoughtWorks, I mean, I have traveled to all 6 continents um, to speak at conferences and also to work with clients. But in terms of significant stays, I have spent time in South Africa, a few months actually, in Italy a year, a little bit more than a year and a half in UK, and intermittently some time in India, and then I moved to Singapore. So I moved to Singapore about 19 months ago, last year in February.
Great, thank you. So, well, thanks for the introduction, Sunil. The book is great. I read it
Thank you.
last year, and it was really revealing. Thanks for that. Um, and well, as I told you, my experience is mostly on team agility. Actually,
Mhm.
I train a lot of teams, right, in Scrum and Kanban and other, good practices on Agile.
Mhm.
But yeah, I lack, right, the program and the enterprise level. Uh, what do you suggest to enable agility on those levels and, you know, at the program and enterprise level, right, to upgrade from the basis, from the teams? And what are the main challenges, you know, you have gone through all these years?
Great question, Agustin. So if you look at agile practices, right, their origin lies in software development. So, I mean, it is obvious that the practices and the ceremonies related to agile are popular in terms of improving agility of teams, and they have shown very good results as well at the team level. But the challenge that happens is that even though you may have improvement or increase in agility at the team level, if the rest of the organization does not change its ways of working and is still deep rooted in the traditional mindset and the traditional ways of working, the inertia of the rest of the organization overpowers the green shoots within the teams, and the teams then regress back to old ways of doing things because the rest of the organization is not supportive in terms of sustaining agility at the team level. That is why it is very important that while surely you can start implementing agile practices and ceremonies and ways of working at the team level, from my experience, it is also important to begin making changes across the enterprise so as to enable the agility to permeate throughout the enterprise and move it to a path where then it becomes self-sustaining at a certain point in time. And the way that I have approached it normally is that while you may work at the team level in terms of what I call as doing agile, but the mind shift change, the alignment with the leaders in terms of the outcomes that they expect, whatever concerns they might have, especially at the middle management level, all those things also must be worked upon while you are demonstrating deliver of value at the team level as well. So the key thing that you need to see is that you need to establish value streams in terms of your products or your offerings for the customers. And when you look at a value stream, it comprises of, I think, broadly three parts. The why, which is your strategy and your company goals, objectives, mission, vision, whatever you want to call it, right? The what is your business offering or your products or your services or your offerings, whatever you may want to call them. And the how part is the delivery part of it. How do you actually create that product and get it out to the customer? So you need to align the why, what, and the how for every value stream. And while you're doing that, there are all these supporting functions which are there around the value streams. For example, the HR function, the finance function, the audit and compliance function, the procurement function. So all these support functions often have some role to play in the value stream, right? And unless you align them so that they don't become impediments in the value stream, whatever changes you make or whatever practices and mindset change that you do for the people who are connected inside the value stream, it will become a drag unless you don't enable the supporting departments within the organization also to align with the delivery of value as defined in the value stream. So while their concerns are important, for example, say audit and compliance, but nonetheless, how can you still align them to ensure that they don't drag the agility down, but they become actually enablers of agility rather than a department which actually drags down agility. So that is why it is important to look at this from an enterprise perspective, and every part of the enterprise must at some point in time become agile, not only in their ways of working, but more importantly in the mindset as well.
Great, thank you, Sunil. But based on your experience, I mean, how do you do that? This, I mean, maybe in ThoughtWorks. I mean, you start right. I mean, bottom down. I mean, yeah, bottom up or top down or in the middle. Because you're right. I mean, if you don't have the support of maybe of the CEO and the VP, the agility won't spread right throughout the organization.
Yeah.
But I mean, but maybe on a startup or on a small company, it's easy, right, to have, I mean, all these levels connected. But maybe in a big company, I mean, of hundreds or thousands, I mean, what is your strategy?
Yeah. So if you look at transformation in terms of broad high-level stages or change in terms of four, high-level stages, there are four of them. I have called those out in my book as well, right? So the first stage is a show stage, where you actually go into the organization and work with the teams to demonstrate that this works within your context, within your organization. There are many skeptics, though, that this can work in many other company. It will never work in my company or our company. Yeah, that's a common skepticism that you hear from people, that this is okay for startups, but in an enterprise context, this will never work, right? What you then do is you work with the teams to demonstrate that it can still work and it can still deliver some value, and you will get speed, you will get quality, you will get visibility, transparency, all the good things that come with if you do agile practices and ceremonies properly at the team level, right? So that then actually creates an appetite for the change. But while you do that, it is also important to align the leaders to understand what are their pain areas, what are the drivers that they are looking at in terms of what is important for the organization, right? Are they looking at innovation? Is quality the biggest problem right now? Is time to market an issue right now? So what you have to do is do a diagnostic study, just the way a doctor would do a diagnostic study of a human body, to look at different parameters. And as consultants, you're trained to do that. You're trained to look at some numbers. For example, the lead time, the cycle time. Those are like some of the important metrics for you to understand. Where you are. For example, I worked with the client where the idea to cash cycle time was close to 2 years. And that clearly is not acceptable in today's era, right? I mean, who will wait for 2 years for a new product to come out? So when you go there and they have these pain areas, but when you also highlight that with some numbers based on the discovery or the analysis that you do, then leaders are willing to look at saying that yes, we need a change, and they begin to change their mindset. Often it happens that the senior management is all aligned, then they believe that the organization needs to change. But the middle managers are very, very skeptical, because they fear that their role will become redundant. Because in Agile, teams are self-organizing, empowered. So what does a middle manager do? So many times this frozen middle, as is often called, resists change. And you have to work with them to understand how their role changes from being somebody who just passes up and down information and creates detailed plans, which become anyway outdated, pretty quickly. How their role changes from that to being a mentor, a coach, an impediment remove for the team. How this person or these middle managers need to spend more time on the ground with the team and with the customers. So you do that for a part of the organization or for a single value stream. And so the first stage is show. The second stage is scale, right? Or you can call it a shift stage also, depending on where the organization is. So you can shift between, or you can move between shift and scale. Scale is that you replicate the same ways of working across multiple value streams so that it gains critical mass. And shift is working towards a mindset change, not only with the middle management, but with the other departments and functions as well. So you have then probably a show, a shift, a scale, and then finally a sustain stage. So before you get to sustain, you need to identify internal champions who can then take this forward within the organization, because you are an external agent. You can't be there forever as a consultant. And it has to become self-sustaining. And then you create these internal champions. But it's all about making sure that the concerns of various departments are addressed, the silos are broken, and that everybody is aligned to delivering a common outcome, and the success criteria for everybody is largely the same. I think that is very important for this to becoming self-sustaining.
Okay, thanks, Sunil. And now that you mentioned champions, yeah, that's another approach. Other people call them ambassadors. But
Mhm.
can you please elaborate more on that figure about champion? Is it a formal role or figure, or how do you find these champions, and how do you empower them, right, in the organization to leverage this agility?
Yeah. So when you introduce any kind of change, right, you will have what is called as a change adoption curve. So there will be people who are innovators, uh, right? Early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. That's a normal uh, curve which has been found to be prevalent in almost all areas of change. That's how the pattern is. So you need to look for those people who are excited and who believe in this change and groom them to become champions, because you need that passion that people need to have to take this forward and to be able to be able to carry the others with them, right? That is number one. But that is, of course, more at the ground level. But at the senior executive level, you need an executive sponsor, maybe two executive sponsors or three, depending on the size of the organization, who are closely connected with the change and who are involving removing impediments as you encounter them whenever you introduce change or as you scale up change. And these people need to have the influence within the organization to remove those impediments. That's why the involvement of some very, very senior executive as a change champion, or what we call as the change sponsor, is very important. And to me, these roles are full-time roles, especially till the transformation reaches some level of critical mass. Because there is a lot of communication which is involved. There are a lot of there's a lot of convincing involved with people. Um, People will have a lot of uncertainties, doubts, questions, and these change champions, including the senior one, will have to meet with people to address them, and also work with the rest of the organization to make sure that they are actually not bulldozed, but they are convinced also to remove these impediments, as we move forward, right? So it is a lot of influencing work that these people need to do, and it is very intense work. And therefore, my suggestion is that when you identify these change champions, you got to, give them the mandate, and you have to make sure that they are full-time committed to this role.
Okay, thank you, Sunil. And where do you find more comfortable? I mean, on moving these changes. I mean, on the top. I mean, working with the CEO and his VPs in a middle layer with management, or working with teams. I mean, Sunil, no, in a daily basis. I mean, where is more fitted or more comfortable working with?
I think each layer has their own challenges, and I enjoy working across all three levels, to be really honest with you. Yeah. But I have often found it's not so much a challenge at the team level. Yeah. They are willing to adopt to newer practices, because if you go in traditional organizations, people are struggling, there are quality issues, people are spending 12, 14 hours a day. It's frustrating. People are doing the work, they're not getting the satisfaction. It's a sad reality, and when you show people that things can be done in a different way, that you can be empowered, you work as a team rather than as individuals, you are more closely connected to the business, and you can see success quite easily, because when you start delivering software incrementally, right, you actually see stuff going out to the customer and you're getting feedback quickly, as compared to a waterfall where you may not get any feedback for a year or year and a half or even more. Otherwise, it's just paperwork and code, and that's it, right? So you don't get a sense of accomplishment. But when you actually start delivering working software iteration by iteration, it's very easy for the team to get excited. And I have seen this, right? So when we start with a few teams, you see the buzz and the excitement within the team who have adopted ways of working versus those who have not. There's a clear difference in the energy level of the teams. So on the team level, it's a relatively easy win as compared to the others. Senior exec also often they are convinced because they are feeling the pressure from outside. They are seeing what other companies are doing. Yeah, they are seeing that technology can be leveraged by even a small startup to create a threat for them. So they are more, I would say, worldly wise in general. And of course, these are generalizations. So
Mhm.
I really don't mean to put down any layer or any person. But the senior execs are more worldly wise, I would say, in that sense. So it's again possible to get that alignment a little bit easier over there. Sometimes it's the CEO who's aligned and who's really passionate about it, but the people one level below are not. And that can start at whatever level, but usually it's the middle management level, which is the toughest. But I empathize with them. I think there is reason for a lot of uncertainty because their role has to change drastically. And unless somebody holds them through that and shows them what that new role looks like and how they still have a place in the organization to add value, that uncertainty is there. And I would say that if a transformation is dragging, majority of the times it is the frozen middle who is responsible for dragging the transformation back. And usually they are not paid much attention to. They are expected to fall in line, uh, as the senior executives are falling in line, or the CEO, believes that people should fall in line just because he or she said it. But that doesn't happen actually, unless they are convinced and they are brought into this change. So that level to me is the most challenging one to work with. But as I said, I enjoy uh, the challenges at all the three levels.
Yeah, that's nice. Now I'm moving, uh, yeah, to work with that middle layer that you just referred to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a management 3.0 facilitator, and
Yeah.
yeah, I focus mostly on that, on delegation, team motivation, empowerment. But there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of, yeah, politics and lobbying, right, in between that sometimes you come across, those fires in between. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
sometimes it's kind of frustrating, right?
Yes. It is. It is. Again, politics happens because the whole model of how do you look at success is very individual centric. And again, that came from the manufacturing era when people worked on machines, right? So you would measure an individual's productivity. But today, knowledge work requires us to bring all skills together to work as a team. An individual output data does not mean anything unless the whole team comes together and becomes successful. An individual producing better output or extra output really has no meaning whatsoever. Yeah. So I think the challenge has to be then in terms of how do we break these silos and how do we align outcomes across people and how do we make those outcomes common as teams rather than as individuals, because when you have individual level outcomes you make people compete against each other, and especially if you introduce a bell curve in that, then it is a question of survival for people, and that is when people start playing politics. That's my hypothesis, but there is a way around that, and one of my favorite books is called The Goal by Eliyahu Goldratt, which is on theory of constraints. I'm sure you read that, and there is a famous statement which one of the characters has said in that book, which is that you tell me how you measure me, I will tell you how I will behave. So I think we really need to change our measurement systems to align with outcomes that matter and focus on team level outcomes rather than individual heroics or individual level outcomes.
Yeah, thanks, Sunil. Yeah, actually, I just finished reading this. I don't know if you read it, the Phoenix project on
Of course.
DevOps, which is
Yes.
based mostly on that, the goal, right, from Elia Goldratt. Actually, I have that book, the goal, on my backlog, but based on the Phoenix project, it says that the goal is like the basis from all this lean and Kanban and DevOps, right, thing.
Mhm.
So, I mean, what do you think about that? About um, yeah, the theory of constraints from Goldratt and you know,
Mhm.
removing all these blockades.
So I think theory of constraints is fundamental in my view, and it's been one of those foundational books which has influenced my thinking as a consultant a lot. Because in any organization you go, you cannot solve all the constraints at the same time. What you need to do is look at what is that biggest constraint that you want to solve, what is that critical blocker, and you focus all your energies on solving that. After you do that, then the next most important constraint will emerge, and you go on solving that. So any system will always have a constraint. There is no system which is going to be perfect. Yeah? But the point is then to look at this continuously and make sure that the severity of the constraint is reduced as you solve those bigger and bigger and bigger constraints. And this is all about aligning to value, right? Rather than just solve a constraint just for the sake of it. So to me, I think theory of constraints is a huge enabler to approaching change or to approaching how you want to begin to enhance agility within an organization.
Okay, thank you. And you said that, I mean, it's back that, yeah, most of the agile, I mean, when they fail the agile transformations, mostly it's because there are some yeah, blockades in the middle management, because
Mhm.
maybe the senior executives uh, already bought, right, that transformation, or maybe the headquarters is pushing, so that they
Correct.
have you know, not an alternative, and the teams are also always eager, right, to use modern practices. And so
Mhm.
maybe, well, two questions in one. Firstly, why do you think most of the agile, you know, quote, the agile transformations are failing? And also, why do you think they fail in that middle management, which, well, you already said?
Mhm. Okay. So I think the word transformation is become a buzzword and is used very, very loosely by people. So transformation implies that you have changed from one state to another, and people set unrealistic timelines for transformation to make that kind of a change which is so drastic across the organization. See, this is not a this organization is not a machine that you just take one part and you just replace it with another part and it starts working, right? It's not a mechanistic system. So it will take its own time because it is very organic in nature. And because of the complexity, you don't know how it's going to react. Also, I think history shows that if you have to cement all these practices before they become muscle memory across all your departments and the mindset change for everybody to happen, and that change curve which I spoke about, right, the late majority and the laggards also to come on board with change, it takes lot of time. Often it can take anywhere between 3 to 5 years for an organization which is 1,000 people or more. Yeah. And I think that senior executives today don't have that kind of patience. So people are saying that, oh, we will make sure that we are transformed within 18 months or 2 years, or they themselves come up with some deadline in their own mind and they think they can work backwards from it. Change does not work that way, right? Because you are dealing with complexity, there will be a lot of emergent situations. My belief is that in every complex situation, any intervention is only a hypothesis because you don't know how the system is going to react to that. Yeah. So what people are doing is they are taking a checklist-driven approach to transformation. Okay, I have done so many trainings. So many teams are doing Scrum. So many teams are doing stand-ups. So many teams are writing user stories. Yeah. So my transformation is done. and people in a hurry to announce a transformation is done because their bonuses, their promotions, a lot of publicity depends on that. Right? So I think there are reasons why executives want to rush into saying that yes, we have done this and teams are doing this and therefore we have transformed. But as I said earlier, you might be doing all of that and you might be getting the benefits as well. But when you leave it at that and when you don't transform the rest of the organization and say the transformation is successful, as I said, the inertia of the rest of the organization will kill all the good things that you have done within the team and the teams will regress back. So I have seen organizations who are now going through multiple waves of transformation. So every 3-4 years, some new transformation executive or change agent comes in and announces a transformation. And they are now finish it in 1 or 2 years, and that person moves away. And then everything goes back to normal, and then a second person comes. I have seen at least one client where they were going through a fourth wave of transformation. And they began sometime in 2005-6, and they are now in their fourth wave of transformation. So what this is doing in companies is it is bringing in a lot of change fatigue. So people are saying, "Oh no, not again." Right? People are losing faith that this is also just a passing fad, and like this will also go away. So people are becoming even more skeptical about change. So this is really the problem of people rushing to complete transformations. The second point, why the numbers are not changing, because if you don't change your mindset, if you just do things mechanically, the end results are not going to change. And therefore, you will see that, yeah, transformation, people are calling them unsuccessful because the outcomes which you want to influence have not changed, despite you think you brought in agile ways of working. But if people do those mechanically, we all know that unless people do it with the understanding of the why and with the right mindset and with the right amount of cultural change in the organization, the results will not be better. And that's why I think many transformations are not having that impact, and they're actually making things worse rather than things better if you just leave them halfway and declare them as done.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I agree with that. But I mean, how then? Because the managers want to measure, right, that success of that agile transformation, because they need to show, right, to the company that the company is more agile, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, how then we give them numbers? Because you said, yeah, we can say that it's about practices, that you have more Scrum teams, or they are doing the daily, stand up, or that they have more Kanban boards, whatever. But in the end, it's all about numbers, right? Time to market, right? The client's customer satisfaction, whatever, cost reduction.
Yeah.
But this stuff about showing outcome versus outputs and the OKR. So how do you work on that, Sunil?
I think uh, it has to be tied to the pain areas which the organization is facing. Okay. There is also needs to be an education that if you don't change, you will perish,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that recognition has to come. So it's that fine. You may be protecting your own job or be feeling secure about it today, but if the whole company goes down, what is the point, right? So this threat of change, which is or the threat of disruption, I should say, which is constantly there in the environment today, and the pace of technological change which is happening, and the disruptions it's going to cause, there needs to be a buy-in into that we need to change, and we need to change constantly, right? And unless you recognize the need for change, you cannot change. Change cannot be enforced, right? So organizations, need to recognize that they have no choice but to embrace change and evolution. And that recognition sometimes comes at the senior executive level, as I said, but the middle management is still not bought into it, right? And often you have to then change the way you assign success to them uh, to make them fall in line. Because as I said, right, how you measure success is how people behave. First of all, the senior executives have to start changing their own mindset. I have seen organizations where the senior executives wants everybody to change, but they continue to behave in the old way, right? So it's never going to work that way. So the change in mindset has to start at the top. I am fully convinced about it, right? And that change then should percolate down in terms of the behavior, the mindset, and the culture. See, behavior and mindset again is a recursive loop. Yeah, what they both influence each other. But the way to break that loop is to change behaviors of people and incentivize people to behave in the right way, and disincentivize to uh, uh, people to avoid some behaviors which are pulling the organization back. But the role modeling has to start with the senior leadership, and the expectations then have to be set at the middle management level as well, that this is the behavior we expect. These are behaviors to be discouraged. We will not accept these kind of behaviors. And if you behave in the right way, yes, that's what success looks like. Uh, and slowly then the mind shift and the culture in the organization begins to change. But it's a tricky thing to do. It needs a lot of grit. It needs a lot of patience. It needs a lot of perseverance. It needs a lot of communication, counseling, mentoring, coaching. All the softer things have to come into play, and that's when that happens. See, many times again we see organizations which want to change when they are actually facing the threat of survival, and by then it is too late, right? So this organizations which are doing well today need to recognize that they need to bring in that nimbleness as the change that is happening in the external environment is so exponential.
Okay, thank you, Sunil, for that. And based on your experience, right, on agile evolutions, right, across Asia, even Africa, you said that you've been to
Yeah.
South Africa, also Europe, you were in the UK,
Yeah.
and also, right, your experience in the US. I mean, what's the impact of the local culture for enable agility and adopting the agile mindset? I mean, do you think there's like a local way? I mean, what's your perception on that?
All right. So my view is that if you allow the local culture to dominate, it will. Okay. So in some countries, there is a very boss-driven culture where authority is always to be respected. Whatever the boss says is always right. You're not supposed to challenge the boss because the boss is the boss, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that, but there are countries where, hey, it doesn't matter. If you are the boss, that's your role. I still have a voice on the table, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay to do as well, right? So there are different cultures across the world, and again, there is nothing right or wrong about this, but there are some cultures where, because it is a hierarchical driven organization and people play into the hierarchy, it does become an impediment to agility, and the adoption rate definitely is slower in general in those countries where the respect for authority, or the, I would say, it's not just respect, right? It's like blind adherence to authority. I think that's where in general the level of agile adoption or improvement in agility is a little bit lower as compared to the rest of the world. But having said that, let me give you an example of ThoughtWorks, right? We are in 13, 14 countries. We used to be at one time in Africa as well. And we have 40 offices across the globe. Now we have people who are coming in from different cultures. But when you are in ThoughtWorks, we have our own culture, which supersedes, the culture or the local culture, or at least the bad parts of the local culture, right? So of course there will be a little bit of cultural flavor, uh, uh, the language, etc. all those things are local. But at the same time, what we try to do is we try to create a culture within ThoughtWorks, which is based on our own core values and principles, right? Which is not contrary to the local culture, but at the same time, it is not taking the bad practices of the local culture as well. Yeah. So we try to take, the good practices of a local culture, and there are nuances and there are flavors of local culture within each of our offices. But the core culture, which is there of ThoughtWorks, you will find the same core culture across all our offices across the world. So I think it depends on the organization. So as I said earlier, right, if you allow the local culture to take over, and if you don't have your own cultural identity as an organization that you believe in, then the local culture will prevail more than more than your own corporate culture. But if you have a strong corporate culture, then yes, you can make sure that you can have a uniform culture across the globe and overcome the challenges or some of the not so nice things about the local culture with your own culture.
Yeah, that's a good point. And actually, nowadays, I mean, I think that although that, as you said, I mean, you are in Singapore, I'm in Peru, right? But nowadays, and I work a lot with, organization across Latin America.
Mhm.
Um, and nowadays, it's most about, as you said, right, a global culture. It doesn't uh, depend on when you are, but on how you think and how you push things forward. And it's on the internet era, and nowadays that we're all
Mhm.
working remotely. So yeah, I think although there's a local flavor and a local culture, nowadays it's mostly about summing value and working as a team
Correct.
wherever you are, right?
Correct. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yeah, I think this remote working has really brought in a completely different dimension now, and it has created its own culture now, right? The Zoom culture, as we can call it. Uh, and to be honest with you, I'm still getting used to this. I mean, all my life I worked with people in person, and that's what I enjoyed. And while I may get used to this after some time, I'm still hoping in my heart that we get back to old ways where we work with people in person rather than remotely. But who knows? Maybe this is a permanent change which has come in, and this is all part of evolution for us also. So,
Yeah. And finally, Sunil, speaking about this sad crisis that has spread around the world, or the COVID. I think that nowadays it's really revealing that the comp, or based on my experience, right, that the companies that were already agile before the crisis adopted better than others. What do you think on that?
I completely agree with you, Agustin, right? So look at this. The whole customer experience for many organizations has changed completely. And people who have had the 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 capability to be nimble, yeah, to be able to adapt to change quickly, and that is agility. I mean, agility, in my view, has three underlying capabilities: the ability to sense, the ability to adapt, and the ability to respond. And it is when this kind of crisis strikes is when you know the level of agility in your organization, right? And you're absolutely right that people who have had the nimbleness or the underlying capabilities of agility, especially those relating to adapting and responding, are the ones who are thriving today because they have been able to pivot from whatever business model they had to a new business model. Organizations are known to have uh, come up with new products, new ways of engaging with customers very, very quickly, only because they have had agility, and the mindset of the leaders and the culture within the organization also was very, very supportive of that. So completely agree with you. I think COVID crisis has, as we say, separated the men from the boys, uh, And the story is still not over. This crisis is still not over by any means, right? We don't know how this is really going to impact many organizations. I mean, we see many organizations struggling. Some industries are struggling, but they don't have a choice. So even though companies may be agile within those industries, unfortunately, they have no choice but to go through a bad patch right now, especially the travel industry, the tourism industry, uh, hotels, airlines, etc. They have no choice but to go through this bad period. But there are so many other industries where people have innovated and have done well, and mostly organizations which have had very strong digital assets and have been able to leverage those correctly, yeah, and also being able to quickly pivot the customer journeys from physical journeys to digital journeys. They are the ones who are doing well and have adapted to change and are not only surviving, but some of them are thriving as well. So yes, agility is the enabler for many organizations in this COVID crisis to be able to actually keep up pace with this challenge and be able to deal with it in a better way than many other companies.
Great, Sunil. And well, in the end, as I told you before we started with the show, I read your book. Your book. It's really, you know, famous and sold really good here in Latin America. You know, the
Thank you.
Agile community loved it. So, are you thinking on, writing something else? What can you tell to our Agile Latin community?
Well, people have been asking that questions when your second book coming, and to be honest with you, I am not yet ready for that yet. I think the first book has taken so much toll on me. It was a grind, and I wrote that book while working full time. And I think I'm still enjoying uh, uh, the what you can say the attention which the book is getting. Surely, I may write another book in the future, but at least as of now, I'm enjoying talking about the current book itself, uh, and and my work is keeping me busy as well at this point in time. So honestly speaking, yeah, that's the second book is kind of on a low priority for me, at least at this moment in time. But as they say, you never say never.
Hmm.
And maybe when the right moment comes, maybe I could come up with a second book or maybe a revised edition of this book itself. So
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, so okay, yeah, then keep enjoying this, yeah, sentiment, and also, yeah, giving these shows around the world that people really appreciate that. So
sure.
thank you very much, Sunil, for joining today. It's a really great pleasure and a great honor.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
very much,
much.
Augustine. I enjoyed this conversation as well, and you really asked some thought-provoking questions, which I have enjoyed giving my perspective on. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Okay, thank you so much.